Hey folks, so I got my drip feed going again. And surprisingly, this doesn't get hot at all. The steel pipe. This is pretty warm though. This will get pretty warm, and the heat comes off of there, heats the room. But by the time it gets to here, it switches to plastic, and this doesn't get hot at all. And I guess if this did catch fire, this would act like a fuse, so that would melt and none of the rest of the fuel would catch fire. So even if this was diesel or something, this is just vegetable oil though. But even if you did have to use some sort of fossil fuels there, this would act like a fuse element. It's an insulator. It prevents the heat. It also prevents electricity, and it will melt, and this would melt in a fire situation. So your fuel doesn't boil. As long as your fuel doesn't boil and overheat, then you don't have any danger of explosion, see. So anyways, then the burner is just a metal pan, and the oil just drips in there. So anyways, I thought it was pretty cool. My Eternal Flame sort of got the idea from an old episode of Doctor Who. It was the brain of Morbius, and Doctor Who, played by Tom Baker, was on this planet where all these spacecraft had crash landed. This mad scientist was bringing craft down as he was trying to get body parts to build himself a new body, kind of like a Frankenstein's monster. So anyhow, there was this sisterhood of witches that lived inside this mountain, and they had this sort of eternal flame that was going, had like natural gas coming through the mountain, but it reacted with the minerals, and it created some kind of like elixir of life, they called it, I think. So anyways, they would drink this elixir of life, and they get to live forever, basically, sort of like a Time Lord. You know, they would regenerate. Every time they would drink it, it would regenerate them. They'd be young again. You know, so they live another couple hundred years, and then get old and drink this elixir of life and regenerate, and just, you know, sort of like put some, you know, rewrite your whole DNA and start over. Get another 200-year lifespan. So anyhow, the flame goes out, and Doctor Who, played by Tom Baker, you know, drops a firecracker down the crack in the side of the mountain, and it starts working again. The fire catches fire again. You know, the methane gas, methane they call it over in Great Britain. The methane gas reignited when he dropped the firecracker down the mountain. It was a pretty good, it was a pretty neat episode of Doctor Who anyways. But I was always a science fiction nerd, reading science fiction books when I was supposed to be doing my Algebra 2 homework, or trying to learn complex numbers or whatever, you know. Hey, at least I know how to do fractions, right? But suck with algebra and math, and got lost on quadratic equations. I never could do the quadratic equations right or whatever. I was like, I'll get back to math one of these days when I don't have a computer to do the math for me. I just want to be able to conceptualize things, is what I always wanted to do. I wanted to understand on a sort of a fundamental, sort of like a virtual reality kind of level. That was what we always thought artificial reality is what we called it. Artificial reality was going to be used just to teach people about science and how to visualize electricity and fields and things, and even higher dimensions, which is just a bizarre concept in itself. most people have a hard enough time, visualizing things in 3 dimensions. They're not really good at mapping things. Like they say, the average rainforest parrot, like the gray parrots from Brazil or whatever, these gray parrots actually have a better, or your average taxi cab driver from Iraq or whatever is actually better at mapping than the average, American. So that's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, if you're a parrot or you're a New York taxi cab driver, you're better at 3D mapping than the average engineering student or average mathematician or whatever. I don't know, maybe not. I'm not sure what the difference is between the mathematical mind and the other. Of course, they have what are called, there's idiot savants, but there's also high functioning savants, and different levels of autism. Like a high functioning autistic savant is someone who's socially high functioning, and then they also can do really bizarre things with numbers, or they have some special skill that really seems abnormal, but it's very much like a supercomputer in many ways. That movie Rain Man was based on, I guess, sort of a moderately functioning savant that was good with numbers. A high functioning savant would be like possibly Mary Lou Henner, the woman with the phenomenal memory that can remember the date and the time and what color dress she was wearing, and who got shot on the TV8 news that night, and what color dress the Queen of England was wearing when she was on TV that afternoon. I mean, all those details, and how anyone can do that. If there's a specific event, I can remember details about the day or where I was when I heard it, like things like this. So I have a sort of photographic memory if there's a reason to remember that specific. Like, I don't remember every single day. I might only remember a handful of different days related to a particular year, but then whatever that event is, like for instance when Reagan got shot, I just remember I was at school. I remember the classroom, everything about it, and I just sort of remember just a lot of just different details like that. Or if something happens and I see the thing, I'll just take a snapshot. So that's like what you call the perfect eyewitness. It'd be like, oh yeah, it was a blue Ford. It was an older model. I'm not sure, probably like a '92, and the 4-door kind of boxy look, and the guy had medium brown hair, and he had a red jacket and blue jeans, and it looked like fancy shoes. Couldn't tell the brand. They looked dark, blue or gray, maybe black, maybe. Stuff like that. And like, wow, how you remember all that stuff? It's just, you have a photographic memory, and once you take that picture, it's in your thing. Like, I guess this actress Mary Lou Henner, she played on that TV show Taxi, the redheaded actress. I guess she like did a diary thing. Like, she started out writing a diary, and then she got to realize she didn't even have to write the diary. Just like, she did it in her head, and she didn't even need the book anymore. And she can just look it up somehow. It's in a folder there that she can just, I don't even know, she probably doesn't even have to close her eyes or anything. Like, some people might have to close their eyes, or they have to focus on something to recall it, or a thing. I never could remember people's names. I would hear, I just like, I don't listen well or something. If I see something, yeah, I can take a snapshot. But sometimes I have to make a concerted effort to listen to the context or content of what someone is telling me. Unless I'm there specifically seek, like, I want to understand this physics problem, so I ask you a question, so now I'm listening intently. But otherwise I may not actually be intensely. I might be just thinking like what I'm going to say next, which is a bad habit. So not listening well. But so some people may have to actually like close their eyes or this or that. I had to use mnemonics because I could not remember people's names. Like I said, I was not paying attention. Oh, they told me their name. So now when someone tells me their name, if I'm making a conscious effort they'll be like, oh, I have my money, Mark Brown the carpenter. So then I just have to make a conscious effort to a mnemonic. I like, oh, Mark, I'll think of like the scripture, or I'll think of, this Mark that I went to school with that played basketball. Basketball is Brown, Mark Brown. Mark from school that played basketball. Basketball's Brown. And then carpentry, I'll think about like, oh, there was always a carpenter working on the gymnasium there in the basketball gym. So then he's a carpenter, Mark, played basketball, Brown, Mark Brown. He was a carpenter because there's always a carpenter at the gym. I had that little thing, and there's just a little short story about this kid I went to school with and the carpenter that was always there at the basketball where we played basketball together. That little short story in my mind connects to this person I just met, even though we didn't actually share any kind of childhood, or I don't have these deep memories. The photographic memory of the kid I went to school with, or the gymnasium, or the carpenter, see? So I can link that photographic memory with a story, and, we call that a mnemonic. So, and ironically, they actually had a movie called Johnny Mnemonic. And my name is John, and I invented virtual reality, and the movie was about virtual reality. Sort of like art imitating life, I guess. So anyhow, I gotta turn my drip feed up a little bit. The fire's getting low. But this is kind of neat. I don't really have to add firewood. All I have to do is just keep the thermostat turned up, and the fire just keeps going. The Eterna Flame is sort of a room space heater, and using the used vegetable oil, and it burns actually pretty clean. Like, you go out there, you can't really smell it. Just maybe smells like fried chicken or something, and I've never really noticed any bad odor from this. So fairly clean burning, good way to recycle the used vegetable oil, and good way to stay warm without having to use a lot of electricity. So it's better for the environment. It's not adding to global warming so much. Thanks for watching.